Hello, my friends. Chad here, and wow, it's a gorgeous day here in Austin, Texas, on the lake. I mean, this is as good as it gets. So I was thinking today I would talk about some of the emotional issues around eating and some of the things that could be blocking you from getting progress and helping you understand why there might be an emotional pattern there. So as I was walking around this lake, one of the things I always do is I always listen to books. And the other day I was listening to a book called Mastery of Self by a man named Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. Highly recommend it. But he gave this excellent example of a young boy who was eating dinner with his grandmother, and he ate about halfway through his plate. And at that time, he felt he was full. So he said, "Grandmother, I'm full. I've had enough food. I don't need any more." And of course, the grandmother comes in and says, "You have to eat your food. There are starving children in Africa, and I worked really hard in that food." So, what she's doing there is using guilt and shame in order to get that young boy to eat the rest of his plate. And she's doing that because that's the same thing that was done to her by her parents and her parents' parents and so on. So it's a learned behavior that's passed down. But the boy, after a while, he sits with this. Before he was able to stand up and speak his truth, feel into his body, and say, "No, I don't want any more food." He feels that guilt and shame, so he gives in and he eats the food. He eats the entire plate, even though that's not what his body needs. And as a consequence of that, he has an impact. He ends up gaining more weight than he needs. He loses the power to speak his truth, and this goes on and on. So this becomes a pattern, right? And throughout his life. And then, he becomes a young man one day sitting at a restaurant, and the same thing is happening there. He's about halfway through his plate, and his body is full, but he now has a subconscious belief that he's unaware of, that is controlling the show, that's telling him to finish the plate. It's an unconscious voice in his head. Essentially, it's his grandmother still telling him to eat the rest of his food. So he does. It's a habit over and over and over again. And now he's overweight, and he, despite understanding that not overeating is important, despite understanding that he needs to exercise and all these things, he's unable to overcome that one specific belief that was impressed upon him as a young child. And this is something I see so common with not only eating and trying to get healthy, but so many issues in our life, is that things happen in our life and we turn them into unconscious or subconscious beliefs. And these subconscious beliefs end up running the show in many different areas of our life. We end up doing things not because our truest self desires those things, not because our body necessarily desires those things, but it's because it's the opinions that have been handed down to us by others, or the concern that others may think about us, or whatever society says we're supposed to be and do and all that stuff. I mean, you've probably heard it before. We live in a society that's constantly trying to get us to buy things we don't need so we can look good to impress people that we don't really need to be impressing. We have big houses and fancy cars, and we leave them empty all day while we go to work. What is that? And we eat foods that are bad for us and toxic. But behind all this are these beliefs that are not serving us in any way. So I think one of the things we have to do is bring these subconscious beliefs to the surface so we can observe them a little better. And in that sense, we become the observer of our thoughts and our emotions rather than the one who is identified with them. In other words, you kind of wake up from the dream. Rather than being in the dream, you're no longer the dreamer who doesn't know he's dreaming. You're the one who's looking at the dream. And you can observe yourself feeling the feelings of "I've had enough," and feeling the feelings of "this isn't right for me." And then you step into courage. And once you do that, you do something different than what you've been programmed to do. You do what your intuitive self wants to do. You do what your body wants to do. And very often you don't need that extra bite. You don't necessarily need to have those friends that may be saying those things about you or judging you in that way. You may not need that job that you don't necessarily feel aligned with. You can have courage and take action and choose something different. And that's who you really are. You're the awareness, you're the observer behind all this, and you are the creator of your reality. So with whatever you may be dealing with whatever you're stuck, just pause for a minute and feel what you're feeling, and then see if you can step back and observe what it is that you really want. Think about the feelings that you really want, and somewhere in there you're going to find the actions that you need to take to become a happier, healthier, complete version of yourself. So hope that helps. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comment section. Anything you'd like to say, leave them in the comment section. I'm going to continue to walk around this beautiful lake and enjoy this amazing day. I hope you do the same. Okay, bye-bye.